I made 500 flowers in less than 3 weeks. Let's get into it. A few weeks ago, I was approached by DuckaDilly Fabrics, which is a super awesome fabric company. Link below to check out all their amazing fabrics. They are a supplier for the Liberty brand fabric, and they have so many options. So when you go take a look at their website, be sure you have lots of time and lots of patience, because you will get overwhelmed so fast with the abundance of options. I got lost in their website for quite a while trying to figure out all of their beautiful fabrics, and it was so hard to narrow down the ones that I really wanted. Be sure to have some time and a good clear vision of your project, so that way you can streamline through their website, because they have some beautiful options. So this company is going to an event, and they wanted a very amazing dramatic flower wall featuring all their fabric. They came up with this beautiful idea of merging their fabric onto my felt flowers and making a gigantic flat custom flower wall. I, at first, was just like, oh my gosh, this has never been done. I've never made this many flowers before, but like, let's do it, because this sounds like an amazing opportunity, an amazing project that's just never been done before. And I was just like, yes, let's do it. Needless to I know that it was going to take me way longer than I anticipated, and definitely put in about 12 to 14 hour days for about 3 weeks straight to get through all 500 flowers. Actually, it was more than 500 flowers, but totally worth it. Keep in mind, taking that extra step of bonding all of your fabric to felt, while 1 sheet or 2 sheets at a time, not a big deal, but when you're bonding over 500 sheets of felt, definitely takes a lot more time than anticipated. And also, there are a few other curveballs that got thrown at me, and we'll chat about that later. Let's chat really quickly about how I actually bonded the felt to the fabric. So I used Heat and Bond Ultra. I have another video out that shares all the exact details of everything I did, but super easy process of getting your felt, putting on your Heat and Bond Ultra, ironing that on, taking off the protective coating, and then throwing your fabric down. So be sure to check out that other video on all the details on exactly how to do that. So let's chat about some of the issues that I ran into on this project. So whenever you're working with a large, huge volume, it's definitely going to change the issues that you're going to work with. So obviously, if you're doing this at home and you're doing much a smaller scale of this, you probably won't have a lot of these issues. But when you're doing a large production of product, definitely things to consider that I did not consider before getting started. One was I primarily cut all of these wallflowers on my Silhouette Cameo and my Cricut Maker. Things I didn't really account for was this process, because I was doing felt bonded with Heat and Bond bonded with fabric. It definitely was thicker and was more for my blade to cut through on my machines. So I was using a rotary blade, and it definitely wore my blades out faster, and I was definitely replacing blades. So I cut probably about 30 sheets of fabric before I realized my blade was too dull, and so I was literally hand cutting all of these petals out of my machine that my machine should have been cutting. So that definitely made things a little bit longer. And then once I figured out like, oh, my blade is dull, it was literally like slap my head, bang my head against the wall. Why did I not just change my blade out? And as soon as I changed my blade out, it was just like cutting like butter again. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, why did I add extra work to myself? So that was a little frustrating. So for such a large order, and the fact that I was putting so many sheets through my cutting machines, I wanted to make sure that I had a lot of mats on hand. You can reuse your mats over and over again, and you can wash them, so that way you're getting a long life out of them. But during the day, you can only get maybe a few cuts on each mat before that mat is done for the day and you have to wash it. I did learn that even washing them in the middle of the day, they appeared dry. Giving them a good 12 hours or overnight helped the adhesive just dry up and be the stickiest possible. Make sure you give your mats a good 12 hours to 24 hours to dry. Check out my video on how to wash your mats, because that will definitely help keep your mats keep going and going for you. I started with my Cricut mats because those, to me, work the best. I have also used off-brand mats, so any mats that you have totally work, but the Cricut ones specifically, their adhesive is just better and it just holds on to things a little bit better, which sometimes can be too much. So there's a give and take with going both places. Because the Cricut mats work so good, it definitely was pulling some of the felt off as well when I was lifting it from the mat. It was leaving my flowers a little frayed around the edges, so I did have to go around with scissors and kind of clean some up. So that was kind of annoying. But on the second or third use, that problem was solved and the felt came up beautifully without sticking too well. I also put all my felt down to the sticky on the mat, not my fabric down. And the reason I did that was because it was definitely sticking to the mat much better. I tried it a few times with sticking the fabric down first, and that definitely didn't give me a good enough stick, and my fabric was moving around on the cutting machine as it was cutting, so I was like, oh, not gonna happen. So definitely do the felt side down to the adhesive when you're cutting on your machines. When it came to the off-brand mats, while they worked, they did not last nearly as long as the Cricut brand mats. So keep that in mind too, that they still work, but the adhesive is not as great. Even when I was washing them on some specific ones that I use, I was not very happy with them. There are countless numbers of off-brand mats on Amazon, for instance. Some are better than others, so it's always a risk and a gamble on which ones you pick. When Cricut mats go on sale or the Silhouette Cameo mats go on sale, I'll snag some of those up really quickly, just so that way I can have backups. Time out real quick, link below for a digital download of all the SVGs that I used for this wallflower so that you can make them at home too. Now let's chat about cutting on the machines. I have a love-hate relationship with my Cricut Maker 3 and my Silhouette Cameo 4. I love some things about my Cameo 4 and I love some things about my Cricut Maker 3, and I hate some things about both of them as well. I honestly wish that we could just marry them and make a perfect little digital cutting machine baby that did everything I wanted to be more perfect. So there is definitely some caveats with both. Tried working with my Cameo. I had both machines out for a while and my Cameo was just not up to snuff for this job. The way that the cut pattern works on the Cameo, the plotting points on it, and the way that it turns the blade on the material, it was just moving my material too much and it was just not working for me. There were a few cuts that worked great, and then a few cuts after that it was just like slipping and cutting wrong and messing up cuts, and I had a very finite amount of material. I could not waste anything. So I ended up trying to change the blade. It didn't really help, so I just cut my losses and said I'm going back to cutting one machine. And like I said, I was cutting about 500 sheets of felt, so I needed the bulk presence of multiple machines. So I ended up scrapping my Silhouette, which was kind of annoying, but it did work a few times. So if that's what you have, if you do have a Silhouette Cameo 4 with the rotary blade, there is still hope. It's still possible. It's just keep in mind, like, you're gonna have to babysit it and watch it and spread your cuts out a little bit more. I'm gonna have a video detailing all about these machines too and cutting at a later date, so keep an eye out for that. Hey, and if you're enjoying this video, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell right now. The settings that I used on my Cameo were fabric thick canvas, because you're definitely going through quite a bit of layers. I did a force of 15 and a speed of 5. Those are the settings that I used, but all machines I've noticed are a little bit different and they're a little bit pitchy, and always do test cuts first before you go through and do your final pieces that you really want for your show wall. So let's talk about the Cricut Maker 3 with cutting all of these flowers. So as far as cutting, this machine does an amazing job. Its cut paths were beautiful. I love that it turns the blade inside the machine. It doesn't use the fabric to turn its blade. It cut so beautifully. It has really good pressure. It was very consistent with cutting. I did not like how the software works as well. I really like how the Silhouette software works better. The Silhouette software gives you a lot more freedom than the Cricut version of the software. So I definitely almost combined the softwares, used a lot of the features that I like in Silhouette, created my SVGs, and then merged them into the Cricut design space so that I could cut perfectly, as it's a little bit more challenging in the Cricut software to get exactly how you want it and how their software manipulates where things get cut. So I definitely found some workarounds. I to make it work perfectly. What I did, because I had a very specific cut pattern that I wanted to cut, and I wanted to cut it on one machine, on one mat, in one specific area, I created an SVG and welded the whole piece together. That way when I brought it into the Cricut design space, it didn't just auto reshuffle my shapes to where it felt like it needed to cut, and I could cut it exactly where I wanted it to be cut. So those are things that you just kind of have to work around. If you don't have basically both softwares to do that, you can use a lot of different softwares like Illustrator or anything that's vector based that you can save out an SVG file, and then that way bringing it into the design space definitely helps a lot with making sure that you are controlling what exactly is getting cut versus the software kind of taking over and thinking it knows better than you. Those are things that you need to kind of work through. So the settings that I used on the Cricut Maker 3 was I chose just the regular felt. I definitely went through all of their presets on which one was better, because they have a few different settings that are like felt bonded or glitter bonded or wool bonded, and I tried all the different settings and I wasn't really happy with any of them except for the regular felt cut setting, but I did do more pressure. So that definitely helped get through all the extra layers, and I felt like that cut the best. And then of course I'm using my rotary blade on both of these machines. Just make sure that your rotary blade is nice and sharp so that you get really nice clean cuts. Now let's chat about the differences when gluing your flowers up. I love my SureBonder glue gun, and I love their regular SureBonder glue sticks, and that's exactly what I used, and it's exactly what worked. The only issue that I ran into is that the glue gun and the glue work so beautifully with felt. It's like you pinch it, it holds it, it grabs it, it's pretty darn quick. Now, when I did work with the fabric and I'm sitting there bonding it with fabric to fabric between the glue, it definitely took a lot longer for it to stick and hold. That is something I didn't really anticipate either. The extra time it took me just sitting there like holding flowers shut and making sure the glue was set before I let go of it. And I think that was something that I was like, oh no, this is gonna take me forever. I did use these super amazing handy little clips. Link below. I love these guys. I use them so much, but basically anytime I put a little bit of glue on like a petal or anything, I just snipped it so this was holding the petals together while they set, instead of sitting there wasting my time with my fingers. So that was just something that kind of ran into a problem. SureBonder also makes a glue stick that's literally made for fabric. I wish that I would have tested that out even in the middle of my project, but when I was just going, I wasn't really cognitively thinking about that. That was definitely something that if I did this again, I would like to try using their fabric glue stick to see if that worked way better than just like their normal regular glue stick. I noticed too that if you're bonding fabric to felt, it glued up really, really nice. It's just, I think anything that's adhering to that felt, the regular glue sticks worked beautifully. Anytime you're just going fabric to fabric, it definitely was a challenge and a struggle. So keep that in mind. It does still work. You just need to hold it a little bit longer and work with it a little bit longer. I hope you absolutely loved all of these flowers. They definitely took me a little bit longer than I anticipated, but I feel like it was totally worth it. The final project was so beautiful and amazing, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. So when I designed this wall, I did about 4 or 5 different styles of flower, and that was kind of my initial plan. But when I started really making them and designing them on my mats, because I wanted to make sure that my mat and my fabric was completely full of flowers and that there was as minimal waste as possible, I was able to make some smaller versions and some larger versions. That way it didn't feel so very perfectly kind of like repetitive and cookie cutter across. I wanted it to be more organic and fill in lots of little gaps. So I think it looked beautiful having multiple different flower types, but all in multiple different sizes. I love how this wall turned out. I can't wait to see what some of you guys come up with this new trend. So now I'm sure you're wondering, I'm never gonna make a gigantic flower wall. I'm never gonna make 500 plus flowers, and I'm never gonna put in 3 weeks of time to do this myself. But what could you do at home with these? So I ended up making 3 different size flower roses, and I put them on my daughter's wall. So go check out the other video on how to make your own beautiful roses at home. This is that time to make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any videos. I know I've got to say it, but do it anyways. Check out a digital download link to all of the wallflower patterns that I use, so if you do want to make some for yourself, go snag it below. Thanks guys, catch you next time.